Hello, I'm Adam Ryback with the Ohio Valley Group. We are a snow and ice management company as well as a landscape company from Northeast Ohio. Been in business since 1989, so over the last 25 years, we've grown in our expertise in managing snow and ice. So today we're going to talk to you about what your legal obligations are and is your service provider minimizing your risk. In Ohio, it's been long established that homeowners do not have to have a legal obligation to shovel when there's a natural accumulation of snow and ice. However, anyone that undertakes the process of removing snow and ice can be liable for slip and fall if they have done so negligently or in a way that makes the area more hazardous than it would had there been no snow removal efforts at all. But how does this apply to your landlord-tenant situations? If the landlord has promised in its lease to clear snow and ice from the premises, then the landlord can be sued if they fail to live up to their end of the contract. Or if a landlord decides to remove snow and ice without an obligation in the lease, then they have a duty to use regular and ordinary care to create a hazard or to not create a hazard or aggravated situation, such as a hazard would constitute an unnatural accumulation. So what should you do? A lease or other contract may create the duty to keep areas free of ice or snow, or your municipality may have a snow removal ordinance. But most of all, it's good business, so that way clients or customers or invitees can get to your business or into your buildings without the risk of slipping and falling. Although you're not legally liable for injuries sustained by someone that slips on natural snow or ice accumulations, you may still be required to keep sidewalks clear due to city ordinances. So how do you select a qualified provider? What kind of questions should you ask? Does your provider have a snow and ice response plan? What type of ice control do they plan to use? How does it relate to service and price? And do they have snow insurance? So when going through and selecting a qualified provider, a qualified snow and ice provider will have a specific communication plan in place to keep all of its clients informed and up to date. This plan may include phone call trees to provide a layer of communication, on-site visits or updates via text and email. A reasonable expectation is to work with a professional provider with experience and one that has processes and systems in place for you to know when your property is going to be serviced. You should ask them if they have a snow and ice response plan. Prepared and professional snow and ice management providers will have a written process in place for responding to a variety of snow or ice events, ranging from average accumulations to blizzards and ice storms that require disaster plan for power outages, where there's the possibility that no fuel will be available, and the need for increased resources and manpower. They'll have equipment ready, routes scheduled, and a dispatcher coordinating all equipment to necessary areas. Experienced snow and ice management professionals will make weather planning a priority in response to planning process. Many even pay for private forecasting services to help them be best prepared with up-to-date and real-time changes in weather conditions, which, as we know in Northeast Ohio, can change dramatically from hour to hour, including the type of precipitation and the quantity and length of timing of the storms. Here would be an example of a snow plan where you're going to map out your areas, high importance, what must be cleaned at all times, if an area can be pushed to the side, kind of a site plan where you're creating a punch list of this area first, this area last, in order to keep business flowing through your complex. So things to consider in relationship to weather and conditions include, every storm needs a response plan. A 2-inch midnight storm requires a different response plan than a 2-inch rush hour storm. Blizzard conditions and long duration storms with heavy accumulation require disaster response planning that include power outages and increased resource capacity and multiple shift plans for people and equipment. Many times, snow removal operators and laborers are required to work long hours and irregular hours, similar to a volunteer fire department or other emergency response organizations that aren't budgeted for ready-to-go shift changes. If you have a 24/7 hour complex, there needs to be an emergency response plan required for that. That also includes if we have a snow on a Thanksgiving or major holiday, it may require leaving the table during the middle of dinner or not being there when the kids wake up on Christmas Day. Impassable roads and traffic accidents are also fairly common when snow and ice hits, so you have to have routing to be able to get around that. You also have adverse weather conditions, including decreased visibility, sub-freezing temperatures, and ice storms causing power outages and dangerous driving conditions to your sites. So here's a list of some of the most common material used. Everybody's probably familiar with the top 3: rock salt, calcium, and magnesium. When it comes to rock salt, a professional ice management company will know how and when to apply the right amount to create a safe environment for your property. With rock salt in very cold conditions, meaning sub 23 degrees, it begins to lose its effectiveness, and a non-professional or somebody that's not experienced with the product will tend to overuse it, which would increase your bill as a property owner. Whereas if you put down magnesium or potassium chloride, that's going to have a much more effective use or response in sub 23 degree temperatures. But how does that also relate to your service and price? Similar to purchasing an insurance policy, snow and ice management professionals are risk managers, required to be prepared for the worst case scenarios, whether it snows or not. A prepared and responsible contractor will pre-purchase a large percentage of the required amount of de-icing or anti-icing materials before the season even begins. They essentially are providing you, the consumer, with the insurance that you can be assured your property will be serviced during each storm event. The rising cost of salt is affected primarily by fuel and transport costs, which many times include sourcing and shipping the necessary quantities from outside the United States and Canada. An upfront preseason purchasing investment is typically required by contractors to ensure the quantity of salt you need is available for the season. So, is your provider, your snow provider, insured? Insurance costs have skyrocketed in the past decade, and nowhere has the hit been felt more than the snow and ice removal industry. Not only are insurance rates at least 20% higher than in the past, many contractors are even having trouble finding an insurance company that will cover them at all. These added costs and problems must be accounted for in the pricing of snow removal services, and insurance coverage is a must in this type of business, and companies that are adequately covered will cost more than those that aren't. So what kind of insurance should they have? A common mistake is to assume that companies that are insured for service policies such as landscaping or paving are also insured for snow removal. In truth, the majority of the policies for such services do not generally cover snow and ice management. A strong professional contractor will have specific insurance for their snow removal operations. So, what are the effective ways to manage risk for your snow and ice? Hiring a dependable contractor who has the needed insurance to cover losses can prove first. The first step is record keeping. Successful and low risk providers will provide meticulous records regarding their snow removal process, including work logs, pictures, when they're on site, when they're off site, and the quantity of material used. They also will have a contract that defines the desired level of service that they generally will write with their clients. And then the coverage, there will be a certificate holder on your contractor's snow removal policy. So what would happen if you were to hire a contractor who is not insured? In short, your level of risk is increased. If you hire a contractor who's not insured and somebody makes a claim against you or that contractor, you may be held liable. You don't want to get caught being negligent by hiring an uninsured contractor and putting employees at risk. A written contract signed by both parties is the best way to ensure that each party is aware of its obligations. This in turn protects both the contractor and the property manager and will help define the relationship in clear, concise terms. In general, a contract will help protect property managers and snow removal companies from potential lawsuits, creates specific guidelines for each client-contractor relationship, and will help ensure responsibility for both parties. A contract, no matter who creates the initial draft, should be a reflection of the relationship between both parties. If you have a template contract that's not specific to snow, asking a snow removal specialist to sign it is a mistake. If you have a snow-specific contract, be prepared to work with a good provider and allow for some modification of the language. This will ensure both parties clearly define the relationship and level of service for a property. If you work with a contractor and sign their contract, make sure that you understand all the information related to pricing, level of service, and etc. This will help answer questions before the winter weather hits and will create a better communication and billing process down the road. Do we have any questions? All right. It doesn't look like that we have any questions showing up right now. You are always able to email us and ask us any questions that you might have for specific cases. Thank you again for attending.
Okay, thank you for joining us for this BBB Flash webinar. You'll be getting an email shortly, and if you do have questions, you can either go ahead and use this contact information to contact these guys, or if you can't find that at the moment, just send it back to me and I'll send it on to them. And thank you for joining us again, and we hope to see you next time.